Good afternoon. I invite you to open your Bible
to Judges chapter 2. We'll read a few verses from there in just a minute. Judges chapter 2. But I'd like to say at the close of the meeting, thank you for having me. I appreciate you opening your homes to me. I remember as a kid listening to the gospel meeting preachers, and they would always go into this big spiel about, thank you for being nice and all the meals. As an adult, I really appreciate it. As a kid, you get all the meals all the time. Like, what's the big deal? As an adult, the cost involved, the time, the effort, and even just people visiting from other churches, driving. I'm glad you're here, and I hope I can do my part in being some of an encouragement to you as much as you have been to me and my family. It's great to see a group that cares about each other, that hangs out, plays football after, that people are talking to each other and getting to know each other. Visitors from other congregations, it's just been great. And I hope I can return the favor with one last lesson. As I think about preaching, and that's been the theme of the weekend, is things I've learned from being a preacher. I do feel bad for some of you that aren't preachers. There's a lot of things that, maybe some kind of a headache or frustration or stuff that you wouldn't wish on anybody. But man, some moments, like when you're standing up here and you see someone walk forward and they want to become a Christian, and you're getting to be there with them as they're getting baptized into Christ. And, those moments of studying with a new person that just really wants to learn the truth and, they're just all on fire for God. Like, those are just some of my greatest joys and memories of preaching. And if you think about that, it's been that way since the beginning, right? John wrote in 3 John, verse 4, he has no greater joy than to hear that his children walk in truth. And that really is what it's all about, right? It's not about me or my lessons. It's about seeing the gospel work in the lives of individuals and the change that comes only from God. And when you're a part of that and you see that happen, it's a wonderful experience. And to seeing young men and young women grow up in the faith, and young men take on more responsibility at church and just grow in knowledge to where they're teaching others, nothing beats it. But if you think about that truth, the converse is also true. If there's no greater joy than to hear your children walk in truth, there really is nothing more sad as a preacher than when people fall away. And you think about it all the time. Because, you've got some responsibility for the growth and nurturing and edification of the saints at your local congregation. And you're reminded of passages like Judges chapter 2, where I ask you to turn in your Bibles, where the writer here says, when all that generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them who did not know the Lord, nor the work which he had done for Israel. Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served the Baals, and forsook the Lord God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. And they followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were all around them, and they bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. As a preacher, what do you view as success? What do you view as your goal? And really, this is what I understand as my goal, to teach the next generation, like Paul told Timothy, so that they can teach another generation that would come after them. Teach the gospel to faithful men who can then go teach other faithful men. And you can kind of rest your head on the pillow at night if you know that the next generation has been set up for success and they're ready to go. But then you run into this reality and this heartache that all it takes is really one generation of failure to kind of unravel a lot of good work. And so what I want to spend time talking to you about in our last session this evening is about why I've seen people fall away. Now, there are a number of things we could talk about along this line. I don't intend to make an attempt at a comprehensive list, but I will share with you the things that I've seen from my own shortcomings and failures, and why people end up just walking away from God. And nothing is exciting about this. Nothing is fun. I don't expect you to think, oh, well, this is going to be the most exciting lesson I've ever heard. Here's what it'll do. If you're aware of the problem, you can kind of work on a solution. And we're going to talk about that. I'll weave in, as Greg mentioned, application, because I don't want us to stand by and be like, oh, this is not good. Well, no, it's not good. But it's really bad if we know it's not good and we don't do anything about it. But like I mentioned this morning, when you apply God's will and God's words and do things God's way, you can do a lot of good. And I just want you to be very aware about these things, because what always seems to happen is, we're always taken by surprise. Like, so-and-so says they're an atheist now. Well, where did that come from? Well, let me tell you where it comes from. Nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm an atheist today. It's something that's been happening over a long period of time, and we got to make sure we're on top of the warning signs and we understand what's going wrong and where it's going wrong. And unfortunately, and anybody that's preached knows this, you kind of see it firsthand sometimes. So I want to share those things with an attempt to hope and help you going through some of these things so you don't relive this heartache over and over again. I thought about putting statistics up here. I've had a bunch over the years that shows just in general declining religious views in America. More and more people say they have no affinity toward any religion at all. More atheistic, more humanistic. Should be no surprise to you that it's even harder in this generation than it was in my father's generation, much less my grandfather's generation. What used to be spent talking time and time again about debating doctrinal points of decision about some certain things in the Bible, now you're going to meet random people on the street that don't believe in God or the Bible at all. And a lot of times we're very unprepared to deal with some of those things. And I just want to equip you and encourage you in some way that this is, in a large part, a preventable ill. And I hope it's some encouragement to you this afternoon. All right, number one, before I jump into the lesson, I got some caveats that I want to say about this particular topic. And, you'll be thinking these if we didn't have this slide. And so I just want to go ahead and address every one of them. Number one, everybody can be saved. All right, you got to hope that. God hopes that. The only reason He hasn't come back yet and taken vengeance on an ungodly world is He's long-suffering, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Right? God is hoping that you are going to turn your life around. Like God wants you to come to Him. God still has hope and trust that, something can be done to open your hard heart and you'll listen to Him. And I'm thankful to that aspect of God, that He's so patient and kind. And so there's an aspect of the ability everybody has to be saved. But unfortunately, the Bible also teaches not everybody is willing to do so. So I don't want you to think, hey, if you go through my 4-lesson plan and then you do all these things that you can prevent your children from falling away. That's just not the case. You can do everything in your power to expose people to godliness, to raise them right and teach them. And just like Jesus said about Judas, I selected you guys, but one of you is a devil. Exposed to the same teaching, around the same miracles, but too consumed with the world, easily led by Satan. His avarice and things ultimately led him to want to betray Jesus. On some level, he was sorry, but not enough. And what a bitter end to his story. Could you ever look back and blame Jesus? You think Jesus said, hey, if I'd taught something else, He could have done something? No. And there are some things that you can do everything right, and people still walk away from the gospel. That's hard. That's a hard saying, but it's a reality. Because I've seen good parents after good parents after good parents raise 3 godly kids, and one of them, is a train wreck. And they just beat themselves up over and over and over again. And they're like, I wish I could have done something different. Well, I don't know if you could have done anything different. It's just like Jesus said to Jerusalem, I would love to gather you under my wings like a hen gathers her chicks, but you were not willing. And like God said in the Old Testament, all day long I hold out my hands to a stiff-necked and obstinate people. That's God. So He's not the problem. Sometimes you are. So don't get too discouraged because you think, well, I don't know, mine didn't work. Secondly, and this is a great reality too, just because someone leaves the faith doesn't mean it's the end of their story. I know it's especially heartbreaking for parents whose kids are off, away from the faith and away from the Lord. They're reaching the end of their life and they feel like, they're leaving with this great sadness. And I understand that. But I told some parents, you may die, you may go away, but I'm not going to give up on your children. And I'm going to be there and continue that. And I've seen people come back to God after years of being away, years of being an atheist or agnostic, and you just got to believe. And let me tell you, one of the things that helps bring people back is you continuing to believe in them and calling them and talking to them. Just because someone walks away from the faith doesn't end your relationship to them. It may end an aspect of your relationship to them. But just like Jesus said, we need to leave the 99, that are good and go reach the other person. A lot of times things can end well. So don't get so discouraged if someone is falling away. It may not be the end of the story. Third, and parents beat themselves up over this, and I'm just going and preliminarily helping myself out with point number 3. There are always things you can do better. I remember as a kid hearing the lessons, train up a child in the way he should go and he won't depart from it. I'm like, hey, parenting's easy. And I have 5 kids. I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. And then you look back, it's like, am I doing enough to teach my children? Am I doing enough to train them up in the right ways? I could have done this, that, and the other. There is no parent I've ever talked to that said, yeah, we did it all right. There's always things we can do better. And why we end up having kids at young ages, I don't know. By the time we figure it out, it seems to be too late. But there are always things we can do better as humans. You're never going to do things perfect. And the bottom line is this. In every story of someone's relationship to God, individuals are ultimately going to have to answer for themselves. Okay, people may fall away. And while we want to try to prevent that and curtail that as much as possible, you are going to have to stand before God individually. We may mess it up real bad as a church. And I may have to answer for that on some level, but I'm not going to have to answer for you. You are going to have to stand before God in judgment and give an account for the deeds done in the body. That's just the bottom line. And so, we can do everything we can, but individually they're going to have to answer for themselves. All right, let's jump in. I got 4 things I want to cover, and then we'll be done with the lesson this afternoon. All right, so number 1, when I think about things in my tenure at our church in Georgia that have caused people to fall away, this is what I put as number 1. Hypocrisy among Christians. Hypocrisy among Christians. This shouldn't be surprising. I think if we were playing Family Feud or something, and people had to guess, this would probably be up there. One of the things that people tell you time and time again that drive people away from the church are Christians themselves. Now, that's a very hard thing to say, isn't it? Like, how is that possible? How is the Christians at the church causing problems with people? Well, God tells us in 1 Peter chapter 5 how important it is to keep our conduct honorable among the Gentiles so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. One of the things Matthew 5 talks about is you're the salt of the earth. All right, being the salt of the earth, you have an influence in the world. You're a light to the world. And so people are supposed to look at you and see good things when you wear the name of Christ. And yet that's not always the case. I remember years ago, and Anna knows this story, I was out watching a movie with a friend late at night. I think I was in my early 20s. And I think it was The Lord of the Rings, like when it first came out. And it was like one of the movies, Christian could go see. It's like nobody's naked, nobody's cussing or anything. Like, this is great. My mom can watch it with me. And we go out to the movies and we're driving home late at night. I get pulled over by a policeman. Like, okay, well, I have no idea what's going on. So he comes over and he's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, I don't know, we're just going home. You mind stepping out of the car? Well, I'll step out of the car. And he's like, can you walk on this line over here? I was like, I can walk on the line. What do you want me to walk on the line for? Have you been drinking? And at this point, I'm like, sir, I'm a Christian. And he looked at me, he just laughed. He's like, what does that mean? You're a Christian. Like, all I know is, to me, that meant something. It meant that I'm not going to drive around drunk. I'm not going to be in trouble. He's flashing flashlights in my friend's eyes. Like, what's the big deal? So I told him, I was like, I can hop on this line. I can dance. I can do whatever. I am totally fine. But he said, being a Christian doesn't mean anything to me. He pulls over people all the time that are Christians. Now, what has happened in his mind about Christianity? Well, he's had some run-ins with people that ought to know better, and they don't know better. When I think about new Christians, oh man, one of the things they have when they come to join the body of believers is they got some real expectations for the church. And usually the bar is very high. Like if you've been in the world for years and years, like I talked about a man that comes to church later in life, 60 years old, just been a complete heathen his whole life. You know what he thinks when he comes in here? man, everybody's got it together. Everybody's going to be kind and loving, and their relationships are good, and all those things that we talked about. And, you by nature of wearing the name of Christ, have set this extremely high bar for this person. And they're thinking to themselves, all right, this is where the good people are. And what normally happens over time is they're exposed to some people that aren't really good. Jesus warns us in Luke chapter 12. If you want to flip over there, we'll just read a verse from there. Jesus was concerned about leaven in the sense of a moral shortcoming. Jesus wasn't concerned about bread per se, but He warned His disciples, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. For there's nothing covered that will not be revealed, nor hidden that will not be known. The leavening influence of hypocrisy. What does that mean? Well, kids, do you know what leaven is? Kind of, maybe. No one bakes anymore. Amelia kind of likes baking. But when you get into something that's leavened or unleavened, or you've got some types of flour that you're using to bake something, that kind of stuff's important, right? You leave the leavening out. Amelia's had some cookies that were very questionable. We didn't rise at all. No cookies, so we try again. But when you got something that's just right, oh man, it's perfect. But now in a moral sense, if we're talking about a negative influence, if we're talking about hypocrisy, all of a sudden, that isn't something that will stay with you. It's going to affect everybody else around you. Because let me tell you what a new Christian does, especially young people. It's like, oh, these Christians have these high standards, and they come and it's like, well, this guy's a Christian, man. I saw him at school doing this kind of thing. I saw him wearing this kind of stuff. I saw him saying this kind of stuff. Like he's a different person at school than he ever is at church. And you know what that teaches them? I can be a Christian and I can live like the world too. And so what I'll do is I'll fool my parents into thinking I'm really good, but then my friends will think I'm really bad and everybody likes me. And that's how the Pharisees lived. That's why I had Matthew 23 read as the scripture, because these are people that have lived a life of sheer hypocrisy. On the outside, everything looks like it's good, but on the inside, how we really treat each other. There's nothing Christian happening here. Now, we could spend the entire lesson talking about Matthew 23 and the number of ways hypocrisy kind of manifests itself. Jesus had 7 or 8 that He used to describe woes to the Pharisees, some grief and regret He had for those people because they were living like hypocrites. And what had they really done to people by living like hypocrites? They had affected the religious nature of everyone around them. When you think about this sad reality, some of us will just still continue to go to church because it's just what we're supposed to do and we do it. But what I have seen happen time and again is when people are exposed to hypocrisy, this is what happens. I had a conversation with a guy that had been away from the church for a long time. And this is what he told me, point blank. He said, all the same people were getting together Saturday night and then dragging themselves in church on Sunday, acting like everything's fine. And he said, I couldn't live like that. So instead of quit drinking on Saturday night, he just quit going to church on Sunday. He was going to be true to himself, and in himself, he's like, I can't live this kind of lifestyle, so I'm just walking away. I'm just walking away. So instead of being an influence for good, people in your own church can drive you away from God. And so let me tell you the danger of it. I was talking to a brother about it here. You bring children together. It's so good to have young people at a congregation. But let me tell you, if there's hypocrisy in some of your young people, dude, that's a cancer. You got to get out of there. Because here's what's going to happen. Other young people are going to see it. It's like, oh yeah, hey, I can vape and go to church. I can do these things and not tell my parents. I can smuggle clothes to school and wear something different. My parents think I'm wearing this. I've seen it all. I've seen every bit of it. And I've seen the ugly side of all this kind of stuff. And most people will try to continue to live in this way, but I'm telling you, it will destroy your relationship with God. And finally, when kids are done enough with this mental, I'm trying to be good, but I'm trying to be bad, I'm trying to be good, they're going to give up on something. And a lot of times they just walk away from God. See, hypocrisy is a very dangerous thing. We have to live out the values we espouse. And if you're not doing it, you're creating a reality where people see the church as no different than people in the world. And why would I come there? Now, I'm not saying that's the right answer. I mean, the right answer is you continue to worship God because you're serving God and Jesus, not because these people have let you down. And I've tried to teach and encourage that aspect. Like, people are going to disappoint you, like I've talked about. Your fidelity is to God, and you might throw your hands up like Elijah and say, Lord, there's only me. And you might be surprised who else hasn't bowed their knee to Baal. So in that sense, look, root out hypocrisy if it's in the church and be true to the values you profess. Number 2, and this is a big one too. I mean, one of the things that I've seen kids struggle time and time again is not having the ability to ask questions in and of the church. Let's read together from Luke chapter 2 that I've got on the board. Speaking of Jesus at a young age, when he was 12 years old, they, speaking of his family, went up according to the custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. And his parents didn't know it. And after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them, and asking them questions. Now, I can't venture to imagine what life would be like if you're sitting there having a conversation with a 12-year-old Jesus. You know, we always wonder what it's like when he was a boy. I mean, did he cry? Did he ever, upset his parents? And as much as anybody could be perfect, I mean, Jesus was perfect. He was. I mean, there was no sin in Jesus' life. And so in some sense, even at 12 years old, he would represent, the model child. Here he's, even at a young age, about his father's business. But I want to call your attention to what's happening at the end of it. Here he's in the temple, and what's happening? He's sitting among the teachers, and he's listening. But that's not all he's doing. It says that he's asking them questions. Now, in what sense did the divine, omnipotent God need to understand things? I don't know. I don't know how much of his young age was real knowledge or learning, or God has given him some ability. I don't know, because none of that's explained to us in the Scriptures. But here's what I like to think is happening here. Jesus is doing what Christians should do, which is learning more about God here at this very young age. And part of his learning is not just listening, but asking questions. And let me tell you, this is a very scary thing for churches and Christians to do, because if you've ever had young people ask questions, let me tell you, those aren't normally comfortable conversations to have. I mean, who wants their kid to come up to them and say, hey, Dad, I'm not sure I believe in Jesus. Can we talk about this? Well, nobody wants to have that conversation. Nobody wants to have a conversation where they say, hey, am I sure we're doing the right thing with the Lord's money? Or I'm not so sure about the work of the church. Or Dad, I'm really struggling with this aspect of things, and I'm thinking this. Can you help me with this? Nobody wants to have those conversations. But let me assure you, you also don't want to not have those conversations. And what ends up happening, because I've seen it time and time again, questions like that can't come up in a Bible class, right? Nobody ever asks a weird question in a Bible class because I don't want to look like a fool, right? I mean, why would I be the devil's advocate? Who would even venture to use that phrase at church? Right? I want to act like I know everything, I'm on board, and we're good. And so we kind of suffer in silence sometimes while we're wrestling with doubts, especially as young people. And so what ends up happening, which is what I've seen happen, is people, instead of being free to question, start turning to other sources where they feel comfortable asking questions, like the internet. Let me tell you, if there's a bad place for your children to turn for religious advice, let's go online. I mean, there's videos of atheist debates and all this kind of stuff. And once you start seeing this, you're like, no, come back here, sit down, ask me anything that you want to know. Right? The church is the place where we should be dealing with doubt. We should be building up faith. And you can't have questions always be this negative thing. Sometimes questions are necessary in order to build belief. None of us want our children to blindly be Christians because I'm a Christian. I don't want you to blindly be baptized because you see other people getting baptized. Like, really, the cornerstone of our relationship with Jesus is a belief in Him and who He is and what He's done. If you don't have that belief, you have nothing. And if you don't have questions about that belief, I would be concerned. Like, Christianity is a thing that is so important that doesn't it deserve some level of deep scrutiny? I mean, and it's unique in religion across the world. I was talking to a guy the other day who was into Buddhism, and when you're thinking about Christianity, Christianity is unique in this aspect. Everything about it, God tries to have our faith not be some blind thing, but to be something observable and provable and an eyewitness explaining and testimony and belief based on things that are real. You know, I've had Mormons come to the door a lot of times, and they'll hand me a Book of Mormon, and they're always blown away when they're like, you just read this. And I'm like, oh, I've already read it. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? And they say, okay, well, at the end, when you read the Book of Mormon, this is what I want you to do. Ask God if it's true, and He'll tell you that it is. And so I tell them, I asked God that, and I've got zero confirmation that it's true. So what do we do now? Well, you're supposed to feel something in your heart. And then I really start to freak them out, because I'm like, you know, I've been up to New York, to the Hill of Cumorah, where the golden tablets are supposed to be, and we've been to the temple on vacation in Salt Lake City, and I got some real concerns about the validity of the archaeology behind the Nephites and the people that were supposed to live here, and how come there's not, and then they're like all concerned. Listen to me. Christianity is not intended to be, hey, believe this because I said. Jesus came to bear witness to the truth. And these things were done with signs and wonders to give validity to the things that were spoken. Jesus said, if you don't believe the words, believe the power behind the words. And when you research the many archaeological digs that are done all the time, even recently, you get to a greater belief and a foundation in the truth and the validity of the things that are in the Bible. I mean, think about this for a minute. This happened 60 years ago. But the Dead Sea Scrolls, you've heard this term. You know what the Dead Sea Scrolls were? Some of the oldest manuscripts of the Bible that have ever been found. Now, guess what? If there was going to be some Catholic weird thing that happened where they rewrote all the Bible and now we've got the real old manuscripts, we're about to just have a problem on our hands, right? But guess what happens? All of a sudden, passages match. The Bible is verified. You don't see these great changes in the text that we've been given. My belief does not rest in anything that is fabricated. These aren't cleverly designed myths, as Peter said, but we were eyewitnesses of His majesty. Like, we should welcome any and all questions about our faith, because the truth is the only thing any of us should be interested in. And the truth will always set you free. That's why Peter could boldly say, we should be prepared to defend the hope that is in us. And if we are not prepared for our children's questions, then how can we expect they will ever know the truth? I had a young man fall away because he didn't believe, the Bible's teaching about creation and evolution. And so here's what I did. I bought like 7 books about it and dug in. And I started reading and talking and helping him and coming to a better understanding about his beliefs and his positions. And he got all kind of confused from watching things and reading things online. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't say, hey, you're crazy. Hey, none of this stuff matters. Hey, I'm not concerned. Just take my word for it. I wanted to understand. And in doing so, we just kept the bridge open. And the guy ended up coming back to the faith through years and years of study and talking and arguing and yelling and all those things in between. But here's what I will never do in our church. If you have a question about what we believe, we can have an open, honest conversation about it. Because if you will not talk to them, somebody else will. And you might not like what they have to say. And if we're unable to defend what we believe, then shame on me. And we better be rock solid in what we believe and teach, because we're going to be held accountable for those things. Make sure that you don't present an environment where you stifle people's ability to ask questions. All right, number 3, and this is just as important. Number 3 reason I see people fall away is this: because of their spouse or a relationship that they're in. This always gets close to home, kind of in a young people's thing, because people really struggle with this. When you think about who you're going to date or who you're going to marry, in general, you have guidelines, but my parents are pretty open. And, they'll let me date a guy from school or date a girl from school, and it's really not a big deal, even though they're not a Christian. let me just dispel that myth real quick. The most important influence you will ever have in your life is your spouse or who you're dating. I mean, they will make you do the craziest things that you never thought possible. I mean, my wife, and listen, she's never going to let me live this down, but, you know, she loves organizing things. And I love unorganizing things. I mean, we got married, I'd leave stuff all over the place. It's like, this is a corner of a bed. This is fine, I'll get it later, you know. And then once you do that all over the place, it kind of looks neat because you got everything everywhere, like it was designed. But she's so organized, she would color code. I come in my closet one day, she has color coded my t-shirts, like the rainbow. Like, I mean, shades and gradations of grays and blues. It was like, she must have spent an hour doing this. And so next thing you know what I'm doing? All right, I'm trying to do the rainbow in my brain, and like, where does this one go? I couldn't imagine caring about that. But let me tell you what I care about. Things she cares about. All of a sudden, I care about stuff that she cares about. Paul warned us about this in 1 Corinthians 7. He said, I wish you could live as I am, because you can be fully devoted to God. Because when you're married, let me tell you what you're anxious about. Worldly things, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. I've seen this firsthand. Your spouse is going to bring out the best in you and make you better, or they're going to bring out the absolute worst in you. For time's sake, we're not going to read 1 Kings 21. Remember the story of Ahab and Naboth's vineyard? Ahab was a pretty bad dude, but guess who was worse? His wife. And Ahab wanted a vineyard that was near his home, went and had a dialogue with somebody. Naboth said, I can't do it. God doesn't want me to do it. I'm not giving you our inheritance. Sorry. So Ahab was upset, sad, and he went home and turned his face toward the wall. Should have been end of story. But his wife said, listen, you're the king in Israel. Just sit tight. I'm going to get you this vineyard. So she goes out, proclaims a fast, has people come lie about him. He ends up stoning him. She comes back in. Guess what? Naboth's dead. Go take his vineyard. Now, could you imagine your wife doing anything like that? But I've seen it happen. What happens on Sunday morning? Got to go to church. Well, what's your wife doing when she doesn't want to go to church? Honey, don't go today. Don't go today. Just stay at home. Just stay here. What are you going to do? Do we have to go to this church? Honey, can we go to another church? Like, I might go to another church if we go to another church together. I see it play out time and time again. Your spouse is not a small thing, and it takes an extremely strong person not to be affected. Look, 1 Peter 3 says that by your good conduct, you can win your husband, even if he's an unbeliever, without a word, because of your good conduct. But let me tell you, that is not God's plan for your life. God's plan isn't, hey, I want you to marry a non-believer and then spend your life trying to convert them because it's going to be extremely difficult. Let me tell you what God's general plan is for us. I got 2 Corinthians 16 up there, 2 Corinthians 6. When God says and identifies relationships between believers and unbelievers, here's what God says about it. Really, what fellowship do you have together? What fellowship do you have with a believer and a non-believer? What fellowship does Jesus have with the devil? Or righteousness with unrighteousness? I don't want you to be unequally yoked between them. And I don't think he's specifically talking about marriage, but it's a broad principle that can definitely be applied to marriage. And as I see the fruits of those relationships play out time and time again in a church, more often than not, the non-Christian converts the Christian to being a non-Christian. And I am from a family where my mom married a Christian, my mom married a non-Christian, and eventually he became a Christian and ended up being an elder. That is rare town, okay? So again, the most important thing you can do, I mentioned it this morning, is to pick a spouse where you're not going to have all this trouble. And the number one thing every one of us ought to have in our minds when we're looking at someone to spend our life with is spirituality. And that's a mature thing to say. Because if you had to write down, and God made you tell me the truth, the top 3 things you're looking for, we don't always pick for that. And we will overlook a lot of things if they look really nice and they're really fun and they're athletic and they do all these things and we have all these hobbies. That is not it at all. The main thing you need to worry about is this person going to help me to heaven? And if they aren't, you need to just not pursue that relationship. Because I've seen it. Now again, if you question me on this, I have plenty of people that I can get you to sit down with and say, hey, tell me about your relationship with your husband not being a Christian. You going to go recommend this to everybody? No, and they fight. They fight for their children. They fight for all of that. And they generally are weaker families who are just hanging on. Like, it's not easy to do, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, because you got a lifetime of service to God. And I've seen people walk away from God because of their love for someone else. All right, fourth and finally, and this is another thing I especially see young people struggle with, is they leave the church because they don't see enough action from the church itself. Here's what I mean by that. I mean, you got all these verses in the Bible, in the New Testament specifically, about how we're to do good to all people, especially to those who are of the household of faith. And we're to be a people zealous for good works. And we're to be all about doing things for people and encouraging each other to stir them up to love and good deeds. And then all of a sudden you go to church and you hear people talk about this time and time again, and new Christians are like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And here's the reality. A lot of churches, this is the case. Well, we talk about doing good, but we don't really have any ideas for you to go implement. But just do it, And so we're kind of left with a Good Samaritan type thing where, I hope I see somebody beaten up on the side of the road because I know what to do then. But if I don't pass somebody on the side of the road, I don't really know what to do. And so young people, when they start to see this, they start to see a disconnect from what we practice and what we preach. And all of a sudden, they're trying to do something more, and they want the church more involved in the community. And they're like, I hear about all these good things other churches are doing, and we're like, well, we can't do that with the Lord's money, and we can't do these things. And so what we end up doing is talking about all the things we can't do, instead of leading them into doing the things we can do. Now, sure, you can't spend your money willy-nilly on the things that we all know are wrong, but there's a lot of things we can do as people and encourage other people to do those things. I'll just give an example of something that we did a few years ago, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, it's just an example because I'm as guilty of this as anybody. We were sitting around one day, and it was around Christmas time, and I said, well, I hate Christmas because I don't want my kids to be materialistic, and they expect gifts, and you give them things, but you love giving your kids things, but you don't want them to just expect that life is about giving me. Let's think about what we can do for people in the community. So we sit down and start looking on the internet, what are some nonprofits in our area that might have some needs? So it was cool, right? We look up one, and it was an abused women's shelter and for young kids who had been abused at home. And so we called them and said, hey, it's Christmas time, do y'all have any needs? And they said, well, yes, we do. Here's a list of things that you could help us with, and it's, clothes for kids or socks or things like that. So we let the kids go shopping for these kids, and we go drop it off by the door, and, kind of washing my hands of it. It's like, this is my good deed. And the lady's like, hey, can we meet with you for a little bit? I'm like, okay. But we're broke, lady, like you don't understand. So she says, hey, are you Christians? Yeah, we're Christians. Are you affiliated with a church? Yeah, we're right down the road. Do you think you could come and teach a parenting class for us? Because it's just, these ladies, man, they really struggle with raising their kids. And I was like, wait, you want me to come teach a parenting class? And they're like, yeah. I was like, can I use the Bible? Well, yeah, you can do that. When do you want us to do it? Every Thursday night? Well, okay, this is great. So we go do that, and then we start getting connected with these ladies, and we start bringing them to church because they have nothing going for them. Start bringing people to church. People are having people in their homes, and then they're like, hey, can you come teach them how to cook? These people are so broken, they don't know how to make healthy meals for their kids. And so we got ladies coming up and helping them cook. We got people taking people to work. None of this is a work of the church. All of it is works from people at the church that are individually doing things that now they feel all fulfilled and helpful, and they're able to share all these things with women that literally know nothing but unkindness and abuse. And so one day, and this is just funny, I had to tell you. One day that we were invited to a fundraiser, and Ann and I go, and they invite us up to the front, and they clap, and they give us this award. And it's like, you got the Service Award for the year, the volunteer organization, Mountain View Church of Christ. And I was like, so I walk into the elders meeting, I just hand it to them. I was like, I can explain. Look, this is not, they just laughed. It's still in the elders' office, but it's, people have a hard time distinguishing between when the church is doing something. But let me tell you, people want to serve. People want to help. When they see the values that you talk about every day, about we're supposed to be doing this, and doing the other, and you don't live those out, These new young people are like, I don't see Christ living in you. Christians are to be people of action. I mean, Ephesians 2 says that we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. And if you don't have a list of things you are doing as a congregation of people, that again doesn't have to be a work of the church, but just things people can tag along doing, I've seen people leave. And I've seen them leave because they don't have a place or a role or a purpose in God's kingdom. You know, if you're not a guy, sometimes I remember growing up, there's very few things to feel like you're a valuable member of the church. You know, if you're not leading singing or leading a prayer or doing a lesson or a talk, you know, even then it's like, what are we doing? And when we sit down as a congregation and think about every member and think of what they are doing for people in the congregation or people in the community, when everybody has a role and a purpose and they're working hard, it's a great place to be. But when people are underutilized, they don't know what to do, and they're just kind of sitting there feeling like, well, I understand it, but they're not living it, people will walk. And you know where they'll go? They'll go to liberal churches who are doing these things unscripturally, because we're not guiding them about how to do these things in their own lives. Like, I don't want you to do that. I mean, you are losing potential all-stars when people are like, can we do more? The answer should be yes. Let's talk about what we can do. And when you do things in the bounds of Scripture, like, we need to be a people that are devoted to good works. And if we're not, we let them walk away. Look, I said I wasn't going to be discouraging, and I hope this is not discouraging, because here's what I found. The more you do to deal with these things, the less likely people are to walk away. And we are one generation away from us dying and going on and saying, who are we going to have here? I'm so excited to have the young people that y'all have here at this congregation, because a lot of churches aren't like that. And you really do worry. But when you got people that are willing to listen to 5 lessons in 24 hours, you're off to a good start. But look, I don't want you just to hear the things I've been saying. I want you to do something about it. And if you're not implementing the stuff that we're talking about, well, you're only getting half of Christianity. Well, once you learn it and do it, things happen. That's just like the invitation. How many of you know what you need to do, but you just haven't done it? You know, you feel good when you know the steps of salvation. You feel like you're almost there. But if you haven't done it, you're on the outside looking in. So for the last time today, we'll leave you with this plea from God. Be reconciled to Him. I mean, God will take you back right now. And if you know to do it, I mean, what a shame to not take that step forward. Now, I know it's a little awkward sometimes to walk in front of a bunch of people. But what's more awkward is to stand before God not having taken that step for Him. And I tell you that of everybody I've ever talked to that's become a Christian, you ask anybody here, no one's going to say, yeah, I regret that day. I shouldn't have come forward. And good things happen when your sins are forgiven. And the peace that you find in God, the family that you gain, I mean, all the good things that come from a relationship with Christ, all the spiritual blessings, they can be yours right now if you want to come forward while we stand and sing together.